Welcome back to Learn English by 24/7 Stories. Today we bring you a powerful British inspirational tale titled The Broken Shoes and the Unbroken Spirit, a moving story of courage, determination, and inner strength. Stay with us till the end because we will learn one advanced English word and one very useful everyday English sentence to upgrade your vocabulary. Now, sit back, relax, and let the story begin. 12-year-old Oliver Barnes lived in a small British seaside town called Whitestone. The town was peaceful, seagulls calling in the distance, cold winds blowing across narrow streets, and rows of old brick houses standing like tired soldiers. Oliver lived in one of those houses, a tiny rented space overlooking the railway line. But people didn't notice Oliver because of where he lived. They noticed him because of his shoes. They were not really shoes anymore. The left one had a crack through the sole, letting in cold air and sometimes even water. The right one had a wide tear at the front, exposing his big toe like it wanted to escape. Some days, Oliver felt the shoes were older than him. Every morning, he walked 4 miles to school, through frosty pavements, uneven roads, and chilly winds that bit his ears. Still, Oliver kept walking with the same quiet determination. He had a thin frame, pale skin, bright green eyes, and a calmness that made him different from most boys his age. At school, the teasing never stopped. "Here comes torn toes again. Did you borrow those shoes from a museum, Oliver? My grandma's slippers are in better condition." He always smiled, even when the words stung. He never replied back. He simply tightened his laces and pretended not to hear. His mother, Mrs. Barnes, worked in a small bakery from dawn till evening. Her hands were always covered in flour, and her shoulders carried the weight of 1,000 worries. Every night, when Oliver returned home, she would wash his shoes and dry them near the heater. "They won't last long," she would mumble softly, almost to herself. But Oliver always said the same thing. "It's fine, Mum. I just need them to hold on a little longer." Mrs. Barnes wished she could afford a new pair, but the monthly bills took away every penny. At school, Oliver was quiet but brilliant. While others bragged about video games, new jackets, or weekend trips, Oliver focused on his books. He handled his single pencil carefully, sharpening it as little as possible so it would last longer. His favorite teacher, Mrs. Hampton, a tall British woman with silver-gray hair, noticed his dedication. One rainy afternoon, she approached him after class. "Oliver, why are you staying behind?" she asked. He hesitated. "The library is warmer than home, Mississippi. And quieter." She looked at him with soft eyes but didn't press further. That day onward, she often slipped extra worksheets or reading material onto his desk, secret encouragement for a child who asked for nothing. But winter in Whitestone was unforgiving. One icy morning, as Oliver walked to school, sleet began falling. The road became slippery. His shoes soaked through instantly. His socks became wet and icy, and every step hurt like he was walking on needles. By the time he reached school, the crack in his sole had widened. During lunch break, while walking across the courtyard, the right shoe tore further. Rip. The front flap opened completely. A group of boys saw it happen. "Look, his shoe's given up. Maybe it wants a better owner. You should glue them to your feet." Oliver felt a sharp pain, not from the cold, but from humiliation. He picked up the torn shoe, dusted it, and walked away silently. That evening at home, Mrs. Barnes tried fixing it with strong glue, tape, even needle and thread. But the shoe was beyond saving. "I'm sorry, Ollie," she whispered. He put a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Mum. Shoes break. People don't." But when everyone slept, Oliver stared at the ceiling, feeling tears burn in his eyes. He wasn't crying for the shoes, he was crying for the dream he might lose: school, learning, and hope. Next morning, he wrapped the torn shoe in an old cloth, tied it tightly, and tried walking. It hurt. It looked strange. But it worked, a little. At school assembly, the headmaster made an announcement. This year, Whitestone Academy will participate in the County Youth Marathon. All students from Year 6 to Year 10 are welcome to sign up. The school buzzed with excitement. New running shoes. Training schedules. Energy drinks. Competition. Oliver listened silently, hands in pockets. A tall boy from his class, Stephen Clark, smirked at him. You run a marathon? Your shoes won't even last the warm-up. Laughter erupted around them. Oliver looked at his shoes. Then at the long corridor ahead. Then at Stephen. And before he could stop himself, he said, calmly, clearly, "I'll sign up." The crowd stopped laughing. "You're joking." Stephen scoffed. "You'll collapse halfway." Oliver didn't argue. He simply walked away with a strange strength in his chest. That evening, under the orange glow of a street lamp, Oliver began training. He ran, slowly at first, then harder. He ran until his breath became steam in the cold air. He ran until his feet ached. He ran until his doubts grew quiet. Every step whispered the same truth. If I don't try, I've already lost. Oliver returned home exhausted but determined. Mrs. Barnes watched him worriedly. "Ollie, what are you doing to yourself?" "Mum," he said softly, "maybe this marathon will lead me somewhere better." She didn't understand fully. But she saw something unbreakable in his eyes. Registration day arrived. Students lined up with bright shoes, running shorts, and excited chatter. And then Oliver walked in with his stitched shoes and quiet confidence. The sports teacher raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure, Oliver?" He nodded. "Yes, sir. I've been running all my life." And that was the beginning of a journey the entire town would remember. The morning of the County Youth Marathon unfolded like a page from a picture book, cold but bright, with a pale sun hanging low over Whitestone. Runners from different schools lined up near the chalked starting line across the coastal road. Their sports gear was fresh, colorful, and expensive. Some students stretched confidently, others chatted about winning strategies, and a few posed for photos with proud parents. And then, there was Oliver. Thin, quiet, and wrapped in an oversized faded jumper his mum had washed the night before. His patched shoes, barely holding together, seemed embarrassingly out of place among the shining trainers around him. Whispers began immediately. "Look at his shoes. He seriously thinks he can run in those? He'll be out in the first 10 minutes. Oliver heard every word, but he kept his eyes fixed on the coastline where the waves crashed rhythmically against the rocks. He breathed deeply. He was used to walking alone, training alone, believing alone. A boy from another school walked up to him, a tall, muscular lad with a confident grin. "Ever run a marathon before?" he asked mockingly. "No," Oliver replied. "But I walk 6 miles every day." The boy's grin faded slightly. "Well, good luck then," he muttered before stepping away. Oliver didn't smile. Luck was never his partner, effort was. The whistle blew. And the world exploded into movement. Dozens of students shot forward like arrows. Their trainers thumped the ground in perfect rhythm. Energy bands beeped. Parents cheered. Spectators clapped. Oliver started slower. Much slower. His patched shoes felt stiff at first, then loose, then oddly comfortable, as if they'd accepted their destiny. His breathing remained steady, unlike the runners who sprinted ahead with too much excitement. By the first kilometer, Oliver was already far behind. By the second kilometer, he was almost invisible to most spectators. But he didn't feel discouraged. The road curved along the sea. Wind hit his face. His feet began to warm up. And for a little while, it felt almost peaceful. Then disaster arrived, quick, sharp, cruel. Rear-up. Oliver felt it immediately. The front of his right shoe had torn again, this time wider than ever. His sock peeked out, and the rough road scraped directly against the thin fabric. He stumbled. A group of runners behind him snorted with laughter. Oh no, museum shoes finally broke. He should just quit. Someone give him duct tape. Oliver ignored them and kept moving, but with every step, a stone pressed painfully into his foot. The sock tore further. His skin scratched against the gravel. A warm sting spread across his toes. He stopped. For a moment, he stood completely still on the side of the road, fists clenched, head lowered. His mind whispered, maybe it's time to give up. His feet begged for rest. His shoes had already surrendered. But then he remembered the long nights training under the street lamp. He remembered walking through cold winters. He remembered reading books in the school library with a hunger to build a better life. He remembered his mother washing those shoes every night, trying to stretch their life a little longer. Slowly, he sat down, untying both laces. He took off the torn shoes completely. The gravel was cold. The ground was unforgiving. But beneath it, he felt something real. A challenge he was willing to accept. He stood up barefoot. Spectators gasped. Some shook their heads. Some whispered that he needed help. But Oliver didn't hear anything clearly anymore. The only sound he listened to was his heartbeat. Deep. Strong. Certain. He began running again. Barefoot running was not what he expected. The ground felt like 1,000 tiny knives. The uneven stones hurt. The chilly surface burned. But every step also made him more alive, more determined. Ahead of him, the runners who had mocked him earlier were slowing down. Some were panting. Some stopped for water. Some complained about muscle cramps. Oliver didn't stop. He remembered Mrs. Hampton's words. Success isn't loud, Oliver. It's slow, quiet, and persistent. So he kept moving. Quietly. Slowly. But persistently. Around the 4th kilometer, his feet began bleeding. Thin red lines appeared across his skin. His breath became heavier. His knees trembled. He was now at the very back of the race. But he was still moving. A few spectators finally noticed the boy running barefoot, bleeding yet unbroken. Look at him. He's still going. This is unbelievable. Someone needs to help that child. But Oliver didn't want help. He wanted to finish. Not for a medal. Not for applause. But for his own belief, the belief that people like him didn't lose unless they gave up. The last kilometer began. Oliver wiped his face with the back of his hand. Sweat. Tears. Salt from the sea breeze. Everything felt blurry. But the finish line glimmered ahead, like a promise. Something magical happened in that final stretch. The boys who had mocked him earlier began slowing down, exhausted from their early sprint. Some were walking now. Some had stopped completely. And Oliver kept overtaking them. 1, 2, 3, 5. Every person he passed widened their eyes, unable to believe the boy with no shoes was still running. Spectators leaned forward, shouting loudly now. Come on, lad. You're almost there. Don't stop now. You can do it. For the first time in his life, Oliver felt the world cheering for him. His heart felt lighter than his legs. He pushed himself harder. His feet screamed in pain. His lungs burned. But his spirit soared. He sprinted the final few steps. Barefoot. Bleeding. But unstoppable. And he crossed the finish line. Not first. Not second. Not even in the top 10. But he crossed it with a victory far bigger than any medal. He proved to the world, and to himself, that courage can outrun pain. The morning of the Windermere Junior Marathon arrived with a crisp chill in the air. The kind that makes your breath visible and your nerves sharper. The town was buzzing more than usual, banners draped across lamp posts, families gathered around the starting line, teachers stood with clipboards, and the mayor's car blocked half the pavement. The marathon was almost a festival in Windermere, and today, Rahil was part of it. But he was awake much earlier than the crowd. Rahil stood by his small bedroom window, watching the faint sunrise light up the rooftops of Windermere. He breathed in deeply, trying to steady the knot twisting inside his stomach. Beside his bed lay his old trainers, torn at the sides, the soles thin from years of walking. They weren't running shoes. They weren't even comfortable. But they were his. After staring at them for a long moment, he whispered, "We've come this far. Don't give up on me today." He slipped them on. Downstairs, his mother, Mrs. Turner, was packing him a small breakfast. She wasn't a wealthy woman, nor a talkative one, but she placed her hands on his shoulders gently. "Run your own race, Rahil," she said softly. "Not theirs." He nodded. Those words rested in his mind like a steady heartbeat. The starting line. The school field was crowded when he arrived. Students from different schools warmed up with shiny trainers and branded tracksuits. Some stretched with coaches, some looked nervous, and some, like Oliver Hayes, looked annoyingly confident. Oliver spotted Rahil and smirked. "Didn't know they allowed charity cases in the marathon," he said loudly enough for others to hear. A few laughed. Rahil lowered his eyes and said nothing. But Mr. Alden, standing nearby with a stopwatch around his neck, stepped forward. "Funny," he replied calmly, "I thought this was a race about effort, not arrogance." Oliver rolled his eyes but didn't reply. Mr. Alden placed a hand on Rahil's back. "Just run like you trained. Ignore the rest." Rahil nodded. He moved toward the starting line, where dozens of students stood shoulder to shoulder. His heart thudded loudly, but he stayed focused. He remembered the lonely dawns he had trained through, the rainy evenings, the burning legs. He remembered Mr. Alden's voice saying, "You don't have to be the fastest. You just have to finish." But deep down, Rahil wanted more than finishing. He wanted to prove that he mattered. The race begins. The whistle blew. A sudden burst of movement followed, shoes pounding the ground, spectators cheering, flags waving. The runners sped forward like water breaking from a dam. Rahil stayed cautious in the beginning. Experience taught him that sprinting too fast would only destroy his stamina later. The other boys shot ahead, including Oliver, who turned around once to grin smugly before facing forward again. The first kilometer passed easily. The second was harder. By the third, the hill began. The Windermere Hill was famous for eating the confidence of young runners. It was steep, uneven, and long. Many boys slowed down. Some stopped completely. Rahil pushed. Every step felt heavier. His old trainers scraped against the rough ground. He could hear his own breath growing louder, harsher. His legs trembled. "You've trained for this," he muttered to himself. One step more. One step more. At the middle of the hill, he overtook two boys. Then three. Near the top, his foot slipped. The right shoe tore a little more at the side. But he kept going. The turning point. By the time he reached the downhill stretch, Rahil was among the top 10. The air hit his face like cold needles as he ran faster, letting gravity pull him forward. The crowds began to notice him. "That's the Turner boy. How on earth is he still running? Look at those shoes." Oliver was still ahead, a strong runner, confident, trained, and well supported. But Rahil was gaining. At the 7th kilometer, something unbelievable happened. Oliver slowed down. It was slight, but noticeable. Sweat poured down his face, his breathing was uneven. Rahil saw his chance. He pushed himself harder, every memory of being mocked, every long walk to school, every evening studying under the street lamp gave him fuel. He caught up to Oliver. Oliver's eyes widened. You. No way. Rahil didn't waste his breath. He overtook him. The crowd erupted. Children who had ignored him at school suddenly cheered. Parents whispered. Teachers leaned forward. Mr. Alden smiled quietly from the sidelines. The final kilometer. Rahil's body felt like a burning weight. His lungs hurt. His legs screamed for rest. The torn shoe flapped slightly with each step. But the finish line was visible now, marked by a large banner, surrounded by cheering spectators. He wasn't first. A tall blonde boy from another school was ahead. But Rahil was second, and Oliver was struggling far behind. This was still a victory. With the final burst of everything he had left, hope, pain, determination, Rahil sprinted. The crowd roared. Go, Rahil. Come on, lad. Almost there. The blonde boy crossed first. Rahil crossed second. Seconds later, Oliver stumbled across third. But the moment Rahil crossed, something unexpected happened. The mayor stepped forward, shaking his hand vigorously. Young man, he said, you ran with more heart than anyone I've seen in years. Cameras clicked. Reporters moved in. But Rahil simply bent over, breathing hard, trying not to collapse. His mother rushed in and hugged him tightly. You did it, she whispered, voice trembling. You really did. Mr. Alden reached him, eyes shining with pride. I told you, he said. You're stronger than you think. Rahil looked at his broken shoes and smiled weakly. They didn't give up, he said. And neither did I. For the first time in his life, Rahil felt seen, not for what he didn't have, but for who he was. Windmere had a new hero. And he had earned it with nothing but courage, effort, and a pair of worn-out shoes. Thank you for watching Learn English by 24/7 Stories. Today's new English word is perseverance, which means continuing to try, even when things are difficult. And today's useful sentence is, success comes to those who keep moving forward despite challenges. If you enjoyed today's story, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspirational English stories. See you in the next video.